What if everything you ever wanted was already on its way to you, and the only thing stopping it from arriving was you yourself? Think about that for a second. What if the harder you chase, the further it runs? What if the tighter you hold, the faster it slips? Here's a simple example. Imagine a man standing in a river. The water is flowing, beautiful, clean, constant. But instead of letting it come to him, he starts running against the current, arms wide open, trying to catch the water with his bare hands. And the more he runs, the more the water splashes away. He gets tired. He gets frustrated. He goes home soaking wet and empty-handed. Now, what if he had just stood still? Welcome to Wisdom Woven, a place where ancient wisdom meets the questions you carry in your chest every single day. If this is your first time here, we are glad you found us. And if you have been with us for a while, you already know what we talk about here is not just information, it changes something inside you. Before we go any further, take 2 seconds and hit that like button. Drop a comment below telling us one thing you have been chasing too hard lately. Share this with someone who needs to hear it right now, and subscribe, because what comes next in this video might be the thing you needed to hear today. Now, let us talk about something that almost no one tells you. There is a kind of exhaustion that has nothing to do with how much you worked. It is the exhaustion of wanting too much, too fast, too desperately. And most people walking this earth right now are carrying that weight without even knowing what it is. Buddhism has a word for this kind of restless, grasping energy. It's called tanha, and it doesn't just mean desire. It means craving, a thirst that doesn't go away even when you drink. And the Buddha said something about this that most people are not ready to hear. He said this craving, this desperate wanting, is the root of all suffering. Not bad luck, not other people, not the economy, your own craving. Now, before you close this and say that sounds too simple, stay with this for just a moment. Because what Buddhism is pointing at is not that you should stop wanting things. It is that the way you want things is what destroys your peace before they even arrive. There's a difference between wanting something and obsessing over it. There's a difference between working towards something and strangling it. And that difference, that tiny invisible line, is where most people lose everything. The truth is, life has a rhythm. Not your rhythm, not the schedule you wrote in your planner, its own rhythm. And when you fight that rhythm, when you demand things arrive on your timeline, you create so much internal noise that you can't even hear the quiet knock of the very thing you were waiting for. Buddhism teaches that the universe is not against you. It never was. But it also does not respond to panic. It does not accelerate because you're anxious. It does not change its pace because your patience ran out. Think about a seed in the ground. No one stands over it shouting, "Grow faster." No one digs it up every morning to check if it's working. The farmer plants it, waters it, and then trusts the process completely. That seed does not need your worry. It needs your patience. And here is the quiet irony. The moment most people finally stop forcing things, the moment they exhale and genuinely let go, that's exactly when things begin to move. This is not a coincidence. This is not magic. This is a principle so old it existed long before any of us were born. In this video, you are going to understand why relaxing is not weakness, why trusting the process is not passive, why the most powerful thing a person can do sometimes is simply stop pushing and allow. Not because life rewards laziness, but because life rewards alignment, and you cannot align with anything when you're constantly running in the wrong direction. So, if you've been tired lately, not just physically, but somewhere deeper, if you've been wondering why the things you want keep feeling so far away, this video was made for you. Stay with us, because by the time this ends, you won't just understand this, you will feel it. The Buddhist truth: suffering begins when you force things. There was once a monk who asked his teacher a question that most of us have asked in our own quiet moments. He said, "Master, I have been doing everything right. I meditate, I work hard, I pray, I'm patient. So why does nothing come?" The teacher looked at him for a long moment and said, You just told me why. You are keeping score. That story is not in any textbook, but it carries more truth than most things you'll read this year. Because the moment you start counting your efforts and demanding a return, you have already left the path. You are no longer trusting, you are negotiating, and life does not negotiate. The Buddha was not a monk who sat under a tree and gave up on the world. He was a man who tried everything first. He starved himself. He pushed his body to its absolute limits. He forced and forced and forced. And none of it brought him what he was looking for. It was only when he stopped forcing, when he simply sat down and breathed, that everything changed. Most people read that story and think it is about meditation. It is not. It is about the relationship between effort and surrender, about knowing when to push and when to simply be still. Buddhism calls this the middle way. Not too tight, not too loose, like the strings of an instrument. If you pull them too hard, they snap. If you leave them too loose, they make no sound. The right tension, the right balance, is where music lives. And that is what most people are missing right now. Not effort, not desire, balance. The understanding that forcing something past its natural limit does not speed it up, it breaks it. Here is something uncomfortable. Think about the last time you really wanted something badly. A job, a relationship, a result of some kind. Now think about how you acted when you wanted it that badly. Were you calm? Were you clear? Or were you anxious, overthinking every small detail, checking your phone every 10 minutes, losing sleep, snapping at people who had nothing to do with it? That energy, that tight, desperate, clawing energy, that is what Buddhism is warning you about. Not because wanting is wrong, but because that particular kind of wanting clouds your judgment, exhausts your body, and pushes away the very thing you were reaching for. There is a concept in Buddhist teaching called dukkha. Most people translate it as suffering, but a more honest translation is unsatisfactoriness. The constant sense that something is missing, that things are not quite right yet, that you will be okay once this one thing happens. And the devastating truth is that feeling does not go away when you get the thing. Because dukkha is not about what you have or do not have, it is a habit of the mind. A way of looking at life that always finds something incomplete, always finds a reason to keep running. So people spend their entire lives thinking the problem is outside them, thinking if they could just fix this one thing, land this one opportunity, reach this one milestone, then they would finally relax. But they never do. Because the relaxing was never waiting at the finish line. It was supposed to be part of the journey. This is where Buddhism quietly changes everything. It does not tell you to stop working toward your goals. It tells you to examine the energy behind your effort. Are you moving from a place of trust or from a place of fear? Because those two things look exactly the same from the outside, but they feel completely different on the inside, and they produce completely different results. Fear-based effort is exhausting. It has a ceiling. It burns you out and then leaves you feeling empty even when it works. Trust-based effort is different. It is grounded. It is sustainable. It does not panic when things take longer than expected. It keeps going because it believes in the destination, not because it is terrified of the alternative. The Buddha taught that attachment, not desire, but attachment is the source of suffering. And there is a difference. You can desire a good life without being attached to a specific version of it. You can work towards something without needing it to arrive on a particular Tuesday. Attachment says, if this does not happen exactly this way, my life is ruined. Trust says, I am moving in the right direction, and what is meant for me will not pass me by. One of those creates suffering, the other creates peace, and you already know which is which. Right now, somewhere in your life, you are forcing something. You may not even realize it, but there is something you are holding so tightly that your knuckles have gone white. Something you are chasing so hard that you have forgotten why you wanted it in the first place. And Buddhism is not asking you to let go of the dream. It is asking you to loosen the grip, just slightly, just enough to breathe. Because here is what nobody tells you about forcing things.
It doesn't just hurt you emotionally, it actually blocks the result. When you are in a state of panic and desperation, you make worse decisions. You take the wrong opportunities. You say yes to the wrong things. You close doors that were about to open because you were too busy kicking the ones that were shut. Relaxing is not giving up. Relaxing is getting out of your own way. And that simple, difficult, deeply human act is where everything begins to shift. The power of Wu Wei, doing less to receive more. There is a concept so old and so quietly powerful that most people in the modern world have never heard of it, and the ones who have heard of it usually dismiss it immediately, because on the surface it sounds like the worst advice anyone could give you in a world that worships hustle, grind, and never stop moving. The concept is called Wu Wei, and it comes from Taoist philosophy, a tradition that walked alongside Buddhism for thousands of years and shaped the way the East understood life, nature, and the human mind. Wu Wei, translated simply, means effortless action, or more precisely, doing without forcing. Now, before you think this is about sitting around doing nothing and waiting for money to fall from the sky, stop. That is not what this means. Wu Wei is not laziness dressed up in philosophy. It is something far more sophisticated than that, and once you understand it, you will never look at effort the same way again. Think about how water moves. Water does not fight the mountain. It does not push against the rock and demand it move. Water simply finds the path of least resistance and flows. And over time, without anger, without force, without urgency, water carves canyons, water splits stone, water shapes entire landscapes, not by force, by flow. That is Wu Wei. And the Buddhist tradition took this same understanding and wove it into the teaching of non-attachment, mindful action, and trusting the natural order of things. The idea that when you align yourself with the natural rhythm of life instead of fighting it, things do not just get easier, they get better. Here's where it gets interesting. Modern science actually backs this up. There is a psychological state called flow, identified by researcher Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. It is that state where you are so completely aligned with what you are doing that effort disappears. Athletes call it being in the zone. Artists call it being in the groove. And in that state, people consistently perform at their absolute best, not when they are forcing, when they are flowing. Wu Wei is the ancient name for that same experience, and Buddhism points toward it not as an accident or a lucky moment, but as a way of living. The problem is that most people only experience flow by accident. They stumble into it occasionally and then spend years trying to force their way back to it, not understanding that the forcing is exactly what keeps them out. You cannot force flow. By definition, you cannot. The moment you try to manufacture that effortless state, it vanishes, because the trying is what breaks it. This is the quiet paradox that Wu Wei is built on, and it is the same paradox at the heart of Buddhist practice. Think about sleep. You cannot force yourself to fall asleep. Everyone who has ever had a sleepless night knows this. The harder you try, the more awake you become. Sleep only comes when you relax your body, quiet your mind, and simply allow it to happen. And that is exactly how Wu Wei works in real life. The things that matter most in life operate on this same principle. You cannot force creativity. You cannot force a genuine connection with another person. You cannot force trust or love or inspiration. These things arrive. They come to you, and your only job is to create the right conditions and then get out of the way. Buddhism teaches something called skillful action. It means doing the right thing at the right time with the right energy, and not a single ounce more than necessary. Not less effort, not no effort, precise effort, efficient effort, effort that does not waste itself on resistance and control. A master archer does not tense every muscle when he releases the arrow. He breathes, he aligns, he lets go. And that release, that moment of complete trust, is where the accuracy lives, not in the gripping, in the letting go. Most people go through life gripping the arrow so tightly they never actually shoot it. They prepare forever. They plan obsessively. They wait for the perfect moment that keeps getting delayed because the tension in their hands keeps ruining the shot. Wu Wei asks you a simple question. What if you trusted yourself enough to let go? What if the preparation you have already done is enough? What if the next move is not to do more, but to release what you have already done and allow it to land where it is supposed to? This is deeply uncomfortable for people who grew up believing that more effort always equals more results. And sometimes it does. But there's a point, a very real point, where additional effort stops producing results and starts producing damage, where pushing harder does not accelerate things, but actually reverses them. The Buddhist monk does not chant louder to make his prayers more powerful. The Buddhist teacher does not speak faster to help students understand more deeply. There is a quality of presence, a quality of relaxed, grounded, unhurried attention that carries more weight than any amount of frantic action ever could. And here's the thing about Wu Wei that nobody puts on motivational posters. It requires enormous discipline. It is far easier to keep busy than to be still. It is far easier to keep forcing than to trust. Stopping takes courage. Releasing takes strength. Allowing takes practice. So the next time you feel the urge to push harder when nothing is working, pause, just for a moment. Ask yourself whether you are in flow or in force. Ask yourself whether your effort is coming from clarity or from panic. And just consider that the most powerful thing you could do right now might be to do a little less and allow a little more. Because Wu Wei is not the absence of action. It is action in its most pure and most powerful form, and it has been waiting for you to discover it your entire life. Letting go is not giving up. It is gaining everything. Someone once told a grieving man, "Just let it go." And he looked at them with tired eyes and said, "You make it sound so easy, like opening your hand and dropping a coin. But what I am holding is not a coin. It is 3 years of my life. It is every morning I woke up and tried again. It is everything I believed in. How do you just let that go?" And that is the most honest question anyone has ever asked about this subject. Because letting go is not simple. It is not a switch you flip. And anyone who tells you otherwise has probably never held something so tightly that releasing it felt like losing a piece of yourself. But here is what Buddhism says about that pain. It says that feeling, that resistance, that tightness in your chest when you think about letting go, that is not love, that is not loyalty, that is attachment. And attachment does not protect the thing you love, it suffocates it. There is a story of a monk who was crossing a river holding a heavy stone. Another monk on the shore called out, "Why are you carrying that stone?" And the first monk said, "Because I have been carrying it for so long, I forgot I was holding it." That stone is whatever you are refusing to release right now. The exhausting part is not the river, it is the weight you chose to keep. Buddhism does not ask you to pretend the loss does not hurt. It does not ask you to smile through pain or perform peace you do not feel. It asks you to understand something deeper, that clinging to what was never serves what could be, that the hand holding the past cannot receive the future at the same time. Think about that physically for just a moment. Close your hand into a fist right now. Make it tight. Now imagine trying to receive something, a gift, an opportunity, anything with that closed fist. You cannot, not because the gift is not there, but because your hand has no room for it. Letting go is not emptying your life. It is making room for something that actually fits. The Buddhist concept of anicca, impermanence, teaches that nothing in this life is fixed. Not your circumstances, not your pain, not even the good moments. Everything moves, everything changes, and suffering intensifies the moment you decide that something which was always temporary should somehow be permanent. People do this with relationships that ended years ago, with versions of themselves that no longer exist, with opportunities that passed, with the person they thought they would be by now.
and they carry all of it every single day like stones in a bag on their back, wondering why the walk feels so heavy. Here is the uncomfortable truth that Buddhism speaks quietly but clearly. Most of what you are holding on to right now is not actually protecting you. It is costing you. It is costing you presence. It is costing you peace. It is costing you the ability to see clearly what is actually in front of you right now because you are too busy staring at what is behind you. And the most painful irony of all, the things you hold most desperately are often the very things that cannot survive being held that tightly. Like a butterfly in a closed fist, your intention is to keep it. Your method is what kills it. Letting go does not mean the thing did not matter. It means you have finally understood that mattering and holding are two different things. You can honor something, a relationship, a dream, a version of your past, without chaining yourself to it. You can carry it in your heart without letting it anchor you to the ground. Buddhism makes a distinction that most people miss entirely. It distinguishes between pain and suffering. Pain is real. Pain is human. Pain is sometimes unavoidable. But suffering, the prolonged, self-constructed agony that comes from replaying, resisting, and refusing to release, that is optional. That is a choice, a habit, a pattern the mind builds over time without ever asking permission. And this is where the real work begins. Not the dramatic, cinematic moment of release that people imagine when they think about letting go, but the quiet, daily, ordinary practice of loosening the grip. A little today, a little tomorrow. Not all at once, not perfectly, just consistently. There is something Buddhism teaches about the ocean. The waves are constant. Some are small. Some knock you completely off your feet. But the wise person does not try to stop the waves. They learn to move with them. They learn that fighting the wave exhausts you. Riding it carries you forward. Letting go is learning to ride the wave instead of planting your feet and demanding the ocean stop moving. And here is what nobody prepares you for. The moment after you genuinely let go of something, not because you gave up, but because you finally trusted, there is a lightness that arrives, an unexpected quiet, like putting down a bag you forgot was on your back. And in that moment, in that space that the released thing used to occupy, something else begins to arrive, something new, something that could not fit before because there was no room. This is not poetic exaggeration. This is something humans have reported across thousands of years in every culture, every tradition, every corner of the world. The moment of release is almost always followed by the moment of receiving, not because the universe was waiting to reward your surrender, but because you finally got quiet enough to notice what was already there. Letting go is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of the chapter where things finally start to move. It is the exhale after holding your breath for so long you forgot what air felt like. You are not weak for choosing to release something. You are not a failure for deciding that carrying a certain weight is no longer serving you. That decision takes more courage than holding on ever did. Because holding on feels safe, even when it is slowly destroying you, it feels familiar. And familiar for the human mind always feels safer than free. But freedom is what is waiting on the other side, not emptiness, not loss, not regret. Freedom, space, movement, the feeling of a life that has room to breathe again. And everything you were ever meant to receive has been patiently waiting for that moment when you finally open your hand. The art of patient waiting, how nature never rushes, yet nothing is late. There is a bamboo tree in China that does something that would drive most modern humans completely insane. You plant the seed, you water it, You tend to it, and for 4 years, 4 entire years, nothing happens. Not a single visible sign of growth. No shoot, no stem, no indication whatsoever that anything is alive beneath that soil. Most people would have given up by year 2, pulled the seed out, called it dead, moved on. But the farmers who know this tree, they keep watering. They keep waiting. Because they know something that the impatient eye cannot see. Underground, for those 4 years, the bamboo is building a root system so vast, so deep, so extraordinarily complex that when it finally breaks through the surface, it grows 90 feet in 6 weeks. 90 feet, 6 weeks, after 4 years of silence. Now, ask yourself honestly, in your own life, how many bamboo trees have you pulled out of the ground in year 3? This is the conversation Buddhism has been trying to have with humanity for over 2,000 years. Not about sitting still and doing nothing, but about understanding that growth which lasts requires roots that go deep. And deep roots take time. Uncomfortable, invisible, faith-testing time. The entire natural world operates on this principle, and yet somehow human beings decided they were exempt from it. Flowers do not bloom in winter because you want them to. Rivers do not flow uphill because you are in a hurry. Seasons do not rearrange themselves around your schedule. Nature moves at exactly the pace it was designed to move. Not slow, not fast, precise. Buddhism has a teaching that translates beautifully into this understanding. It says, "The foot feels the foot when it feels the ground." What this means is that wisdom is not theoretical. It is not something you read about and then immediately possess. It arrives through experience, through living, through the specific, unrepeatable process of moving through time and allowing things to unfold as they are meant to. And patience, real patience, not the gritted teeth kind where you are secretly furious and just performing calm. Real patience is one of the most spiritually advanced states a human being can occupy. It is the state that says, I trust what I cannot see, I believe in what has not yet arrived, and I am at peace with the distance between where I am and where I am going. Most people confuse patience with passivity. They think waiting means stopping. It does not. The farmer who plants the bamboo does not sit in his house for 4 years staring at the ceiling. He tends other crops. He works other land. He keeps living his life while trusting that the thing he planted is doing exactly what it is supposed to do beneath the surface. This is what active patience looks like. You do not abandon your life while you wait. You do not freeze yourself in place holding your breath until the thing arrives. You keep moving. You keep growing. You tend to everything else with the same care you wish you could give to the one thing you are waiting for. And somehow, in the living of your life, in the fullness of your continued existence, the thing you are waiting for finds its moment to arrive. The Buddhist concept of right timing, what some traditions call kairos, is the understanding that there is a perfect moment for everything. Not the moment you demand, not the moment you calculated, the moment that is actually right. And that moment cannot be manufactured, it can only be honored. Think about fruit on a tree. You can stand beneath an apple tree in June and be furious that the apples are not ripe yet. You can shake the branches, you can argue with the tree, you can tell it that you are hungry now and you need those apples today. And none of that will make a single apple ripen one day faster. But come September, without any of your frustration, without any of your urgency, every apple on that tree will be exactly what it was always going to be. Perfect, ready, right on time. Your life works exactly the same way, and the suffering happens in the gap between June and September, in the space where you know the fruit is coming, but you cannot hold it yet. That gap is where patience lives, and that gap is where most people lose their faith. Here's something that Buddhism teaches which quietly rearranges how you see time itself. It says that the present moment is not a waiting room. It is not a hallway you stand in while you wait for the real room to open. The present moment is the room. It is the entire house, and every moment you spend resenting where you are in order to wish yourself somewhere else, that is a moment of your actual life that you chose not to live. Impatience is not just uncomfortable, it's expensive. It costs you the present in exchange for a future that has not arrived yet. You pay with real moments, real breathing, real existing, real living moments for a return that you cannot even guarantee. And Buddhism says this is one of the quietest tragedies of the human experience. There is a monk who was once asked how he managed to remain so calm while waiting for things to change in his monastery. He said, "I am not waiting for anything to change. I am here. This is it. The change you are looking for is already happening. You just cannot see it yet because you are looking too far ahead." That answer sounds simple. It might even sound like avoidance, but sit with it for a moment. What if the thing you are waiting for is not ahead of you, but already in motion all around you? What if the process has already begun and your impatience is the only thing making it invisible? Patience in the Buddhist sense is not passive resignation, it is active trust. It is the daily choice to believe that the universe is working, even when you cannot hear it working, even when the surface is quiet and still, and 4 years have passed and the ground looks completely undisturbed. And this kind of trust is not naive, it is not blind faith with no basis in reality. It is faith built on observation, built on watching how nature actually works, built on noticing that the things which last, the mountains, the oceans, the ancient trees, none of them got there in a hurry, none of them rushed, and not one of them arrived late. So if your life right now feels like year 3 of the bamboo, if you are watering something that shows no signs of growing, if you are beginning to wonder whether anything is actually happening beneath the surface, this is the part where Buddhism asks you to simply keep watering. Not because it guarantees a specific outcome, but because the tree that breaks through the surface in 6 weeks and grows 90 feet, that tree was always worth the 4 years of quiet faith that nobody else could see. Your season is coming, not on your schedule, on the right one. Training your mind to relax when life feels uncertain. There is a particular kind of night that most people know very well. It is 2 in the morning. The house is completely quiet. Everyone around you is asleep, but you are lying there with your eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling, having a full conversation with a version of the future that does not even exist yet. Rehearsing problems that have not happened, preparing responses to arguments that were never started, living inside a disaster that exists only in your own mind. And the devastating part is, you are exhausted. Your body wants to sleep. Your eyes are heavy, but your mind refuses to stop. It keeps spinning, keeps calculating, keeps trying to solve something that is not actually solvable at 2 in the morning by a tired person lying in the dark. This is what an untrained mind does. And Buddhism has been studying this exact phenomenon, this restless, anxious, self-tormenting quality of the human mind for over 2,500 years. Not to judge it, not to condemn it, but to understand it completely and then offer something that actually works. The Buddhist term for this restless mental state is papanka. It means mental proliferation. The mind's tendency to take one small thought and expand it into an entire universe of worry, assumption, and imagined catastrophe. You get one difficult email at work, and by midnight, you have already lost your job, failed your family, and ruined your entire future, all without leaving your bedroom. Papanka is not a character flaw. It is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is what an untrained mind naturally does when it feels uncertain. And uncertainty, not pain, not loss, not failure. Uncertainty is the thing the human mind finds most unbearable. because the mind believes that if it thinks hard enough, it can control what happens next. So it keeps thinking and thinking and thinking, as if worry were a form of preparation. But here's what Buddhism discovered, and what modern neuroscience has since confirmed. Chronic worry does not prepare you for difficulty. It depletes the exact mental resources you would need to handle difficulty if it actually arrived. You spend all your energy fighting an imaginary fire and then have nothing left when a real one appears. The mind that is trained to be still is not less prepared, it is more capable, because it arrives at challenges rested, clear, and present, instead of already exhausted from battles that never happened. So how do you actually train a mind that has spent years learning to panic? This is where Buddhism becomes less philosophical and more practical, because the Buddha was not interested in beautiful ideas that could not be lived. Everything he taught was meant to be practiced, applied, tested in the messy reality of actual human life. The first thing Buddhism teaches about calming an uncertain mind is something almost embarrassingly simple. It says, come back to the breath. Not because breathing is magical, but because the breath is always happening right now. Not in the future, not in the past, right now. And the mind cannot be in two places at once. The moment your attention genuinely lands on the physical sensation of breathing, the chest rising, the air moving, the body expanding and contracting, in that exact moment, the spinning stops. Not forever, but for that moment. And moments, strung together with intention, become minutes, and minutes become a different quality of life. This is not meditation as a spiritual performance. This is mental training as practical as going to a gym. You are literally building new pathways in your brain. You are teaching your nervous system that uncertainty does not have to mean emergency, that stillness is safe, that the present moment, however imperfect, is survivable and often quietly beautiful. The second thing Buddhism offers for an uncertain mind is something called equanimity. And this word gets misunderstood constantly. People think equanimity means not caring, being emotionally flat, detached from life in some cold and distant way. But that is not what it means at all. Equanimity means having a stable inner ground, a center of gravity that does not collapse when the storm arrives. It means you can feel the wind without becoming the wind.
Think of a tree in a storm. The branches move wildly, the leaves scatter, the whole tree bends dramatically in the direction of the wind. But the roots hold. And because the roots hold, the tree does not fall. Equanimity is the root system of the mind. It does not prevent the storm from moving you. It prevents the storm from destroying you. And this kind of inner stability is not something you are born with or not born with. It is built, slowly, quietly, through the repeated practice of choosing stillness when every instinct says panic, through the daily decision to return to the present when the mind wanders into catastrophe, through learning, gradually, imperfectly, humanly, that you can tolerate uncertainty without needing to resolve it immediately. The third teaching Buddhism offers here is perhaps the most counterintuitive of all. It says, stop trying to feel better. Not permanently, not as a life philosophy, but in the specific moment of anxiety, the desperate attempt to make the uncomfortable feeling stop is often what intensifies it. It is the same principle of Wu Wei applied to emotion. The more you fight the feeling, the stronger it becomes. The more you resist the anxiety, the more anxious you become about being anxious. Buddhism teaches instead, observe it, sit with it, name it without becoming it. Say to yourself, there is anxiety here. Not, I am anxious. There is anxiety here. That single shift from identification to observation creates a space between you and the feeling. And in that space, something remarkable happens. The feeling begins to lose its grip, not because you defeated it, but because you stopped feeding it with resistance. This is what Buddhist monks mean when they talk about sitting with difficulty.
They are not performing stoic endurance. They are practicing the art of non-resistance, of allowing the uncomfortable thing to exist without adding the secondary suffering of desperately wanting it to go away. Most people, when they feel uncertain, immediately reach for something: their phone, food, a distraction, a conversation, anything to fill the space that uncertainty creates. And there is nothing wrong with that. But Buddhism gently points out that if you never learn to sit with the discomfort, if you always escape it the moment it appears, you never build the muscle. You never discover that the discomfort is actually survivable. That on the other side of sitting with uncertainty, there is a quiet kind of confidence that no amount of distraction can provide. Because you cannot think your way to trust. You cannot scroll your way to peace. You cannot distract yourself into a relaxed mind. These things are built in the stillness, in the moments you choose to stay present instead of running, in the quiet accumulation of every time you breathed through the panic instead of surrendering to it. And here is what begins to happen when you train your mind this way consistently. Life does not suddenly become predictable. The uncertainty does not disappear, but your relationship with uncertainty completely changes. The same situation that used to send you into a 2 a.m. spiral starts to feel manageable, not because the situation changed, because you changed. Because somewhere along the way, through practice and patience and the quiet courage of returning to your breath again and again, you built something inside yourself that the uncertainty cannot touch. Buddhism calls this the unshakable mind. Not the mind that never feels fear, not the mind that never worries, but the mind that has learned through real practice in real moments that it can be moved without being swept away, that it can feel everything without being destroyed by anything. And that mind, that trained, grounded, quietly confident mind, is not a gift that arrives when life gets easier. It is something you build right now, in the middle of the uncertainty, in the middle of the not knowing, in the 2 a.m. moments when the ceiling offers no answers and the only thing you have is the choice between spiraling and breathing. Choose the breath again and again and again. Not because it fixes everything instantly, but because every time you choose it, every single time, you are building the mind that relaxes when life feels uncertain. And that mind changes everything. Real signs that everything is already coming to you. Nobody talks about this part. Everyone talks about the waiting. Everyone talks about the struggle. Everyone talks about the moment things finally arrive. But nobody talks about the quiet space just before arrival, the subtle, easy-to-miss signals that something is shifting, that what you planted is about to break through the surface, that the thing you stopped chasing is finally finding its way to you. And the reason nobody talks about it is because most people miss it completely. They are so focused on the destination that they walk right past the signs pointing toward it. They are so busy looking at what has not arrived yet that they cannot see what is already moving in their direction. Buddhism has always taught that awareness is not just a spiritual practice, it is a practical skill. The ability to notice what is actually happening, not what you fear is happening, not what you wish was happening, but what is genuinely, quietly, unmistakably happening right in front of you. And when you develop that skill, you begin to see things that were always there, but completely invisible to an anxious and impatient mind. The first sign that things are shifting is the arrival of unexpected calm. Not the kind of calm you perform for other people, not the kind you manufacture by telling yourself everything is fine when it clearly is not, but a genuine, unannounced, slightly surprising quietness that settles somewhere inside you without explanation. One day you wake up and the thing that kept you awake for months feels slightly lighter. Not gone, not resolved, just lighter. Buddhism recognizes this immediately. It is the natural result of genuine release. When you truly begin to let go, not just intellectually, but in your bones, the body registers it before the mind does. That unexpected calm is not emptiness, it is space. space that something new is about to fill. The second sign is that the right people begin to appear, not in a dramatic or magical way, but in the ordinary, easy-to-dismiss way that most people attribute to coincidence. A conversation happens that opens a door you did not know existed. Someone mentions something that connects directly to what you have been quietly working toward. A stranger says something that sounds exactly like the answer to a question you stopped asking out loud. Buddhism does not call this luck. It calls this alignment. When you stop broadcasting the frequency of desperation and panic, you naturally become available to a different quality of connection. And connection, real, meaningful, well-timed human connection, is almost always how the next chapter begins. The third sign is a shift in how time feels. When you are in a state of anxious waiting, time moves in the most cruel and unusual way. The days feel endless, but the weeks disappear. You feel simultaneously like you have been waiting forever and like you're running out of time. But when something genuine is on its way, when you have done the inner work of releasing and trusting, time starts to feel different, more spacious, less urgent. You stop counting days, you stop calculating how long it has been. And this is not denial, this is presence. The mind that is genuinely at peace with where it is does not need to keep checking the clock. And that change in your relationship with time is one of the quietest but most reliable signs that something is shifting beneath the surface. The fourth sign is that small things start working. This one sounds almost too ordinary to be meaningful, but pay attention to it. When the larger things in your life feel stuck, the universe, or your own shifted energy, depending on how you prefer to understand it, often begins with small corrections. A process that was complicated suddenly simplifies. A relationship that felt strained has one unexpectedly easy conversation. Something you lost turns up. Something you were dreading resolves itself without the confrontation you prepared for. These small things are not random. They are the early movement of a tide that is turning. Buddhism teaches that change does not announce itself with a dramatic entrance. It begins in the corners, in the small forgotten places. And if you are paying attention, if you have trained your awareness through the practices of stillness and presence, you will notice it there before it arrives at the center of your life. The fifth sign is an increase in clarity. When anxiety runs your mind, everything looks blurry. Decisions feel impossible. Options all carry equal amounts of risk and uncertainty. You cannot see clearly because the lens of fear distorts everything it looks through. But when you begin to genuinely relax, when the internal noise begins to quiet, something sharpens. You start to know things you did not know before. Not because new information arrived, but because your mind finally became still enough to process what was already there. Suddenly, the decision that felt impossible becomes obvious. Suddenly, you know which direction to move in. Suddenly, the path that was obscured by your own panic becomes visible. Buddhism calls this the natural intelligence of a quiet mind, and it is available to every human being who creates the conditions for it to emerge.
The sixth sign is something that will sound strange until you experience it yourself. You stop needing the thing to arrive in order to feel okay. This is subtle. This is easy to misunderstand. It does not mean you no longer want it. It does not mean you have given up on it. It means something has shifted so fundamentally inside you that your sense of peace is no longer entirely dependent on a specific outcome. And paradoxically, almost comically, this is usually the exact moment things begin to accelerate. Because when you stop needing something with that desperate white-knuckled energy, you remove the invisible wall that desperation builds between you and the very thing you want. You become available to receive it. And receiving requires openness, requires space, requires the absence of that clenching, urgent, fear-saturated energy that was ironically blocking the arrival all along. Buddhism speaks of a concept called mudita, sympathetic joy, the ability to feel genuine happiness at the good things happening around you. And interestingly, this capacity returns when things are about to shift in your own life.
When you are deep in struggle and anxiety, other people's good fortune can feel like an accusation, like evidence that the universe is distributing its gifts unfairly. But when your inner state begins to realign, when trust replaces panic and presence replaces urgency, you find yourself genuinely happy when good things happen to people around you. And that shift in how you relate to others is one of the clearest internal signals that something in you has genuinely changed. The eighth sign is the return of creativity and curiosity. Anxiety is the enemy of both. When you are consumed by worry, your world shrinks. Your thinking becomes narrow and repetitive. You lose interest in things that used to excite you. Your imagination, which is one of the most powerful tools you possess, goes completely quiet because all available mental resources are consumed by the management of fear. But when things begin to shift, when the inner climate genuinely starts to change, creativity returns. You start having ideas again. You start noticing beauty in ordinary things again. You start feeling curious about your own future instead of terrified of it. And that return of aliveness, that quiet rekindling of interest in your own existence, is one of the most beautiful and unmistakable signs that you are moving in the right direction. There's a moment in many Buddhist stories where the student suddenly laughs, not because something funny was said, but because they finally understood something so obvious, so simple, so completely present the entire time that the only appropriate response is laughter. The laughter of recognition, of seeing clearly what was always there. And that is what this sign reading practice ultimately leads to. Not a dramatic revelation, not a lightning bolt of cosmic confirmation, but a quiet, almost amused recognition. Oh, it was already happening. It was moving the whole time. I just could not see it because I was looking too hard in the wrong direction. Think about how you find something you lost in your own home. You search frantically, you tear the place apart, you look in every obvious place twice, you get frustrated, you give up. You sit down, and then, in the stillness of having stopped searching, your eyes drift naturally to the exact spot where it was sitting the entire time, in plain sight, waiting, not hidden, just missed by a mind that was moving too fast to actually see. Your life is doing the same thing right now. The things you are waiting for are not as far away as your anxiety tells you they are. The distance between where you are and where you want to be is shorter than the fear makes it look. And the signs of movement, the gentle, quiet, easy to overlook signals that things are shifting, they are already there if you have the stillness and the courage to actually look. Buddhism does not promise you a specific outcome. It never did. What it promises is something more valuable than any specific result. It promises that a mind trained in awareness, grounded in trust, and freed from the distortion of panic, that mind will see clearly. And a mind that sees clearly does not miss its moment. It does not walk past the open door because it was too busy staring at the locked one. The signs are real. They are already around you. And the only question Buddhism ever really asks is the same one it is asking you right now. Are you still enough to see them? There's a moment that happens at the end of a long storm. The rain slows, the wind drops, and for just a few seconds before the sun fully appears, everything goes completely still. The world is wet and quiet and somehow cleaner than it was before. And in that stillness, that brief, delicate, unrepeatable stillness, something in the human chest exhales. Not because the storm was not real, not because it did not cost anything, but because it passed and you are still here. That moment is what this entire conversation has been pointing toward. Not a destination, not an achievement, not the arrival of every single thing you ever wanted wrapped neatly in a package at your front door, but that exhale, that quiet, grounded, deeply human exhale that says, I made it through. I trusted, I stayed, and something on the other side of all that waiting is beginning to take shape. You came into this video carrying something. Maybe you knew exactly what it was. Maybe you could not name it, but you felt its weight. The exhaustion of chasing, the frustration of forcing, the
the quiet desperation of wondering whether anything you were working toward was actually ever going to arrive. And if any part of what was shared here landed somewhere real inside you, then this video did exactly what it was meant to do. Because here is the truth that Buddhism has always carried at its very center. The teaching that outlasted empires, survived centuries, crossed oceans and cultures and languages, and still arrives today with the same quiet power it always had. The truth is this: you were never broken. You were never behind. You were never as far from what you wanted as the anxiety made it feel. You were simply a human being doing what human beings do, struggling against the current when the river was always willing to carry you. The path that was laid out across these 8 conversations was not random. It moved in a specific direction. From understanding why we chase, to recognizing what forcing costs us, to discovering the ancient wisdom of effortless action, to the courage of genuine release, to the profound patience that nature has always modeled for us, to the practical work of training a mind that does not collapse under uncertainty, to learning to read the quiet signs that things are already in motion, and now here, to this moment, where everything converges into one simple invitation. Relax. Not as an instruction to be lazy, not as permission to abandon your dreams or stop showing up for your life, but as a genuine, deeply considered, spiritually grounded choice to stop fighting the river, to plant your feet a little less firmly against the current, to trust, really trust, that what is meant for you is not only possible, but already in motion in ways you may not yet be able to see. Buddhism never promised that relaxing would make life effortless. The middle way was never the easy way. What it promised, what every tradition, every monk, every ancient teacher who ever sat under a tree and looked honestly at the human condition has consistently pointed toward, is that the quality of your inner state determines the quality of your experience. Not fully, not in some naive way that ignores real hardship and genuine difficulty, but profoundly, fundamentally, in ways that matter more than most people ever allow themselves to discover. When you relax, genuinely, internally, deeply relax, you do not become passive, you become clear. You do not stop caring, you start seeing. You do not give up on what you want, you become capable of actually receiving it. And that shift from the clenched fist to the open hand is not just a spiritual metaphor, it is the most practical, most transformative, most immediately applicable piece of wisdom that 2,500 years of human inquiry has ever produced. Think about where you were at the beginning of this video. Think about the question that opened everything. What if the harder you chase, the further it runs? Does that question feel different now? Does it carry a different weight? Does it point towards something you can actually feel rather than just intellectually understand? Because that is the difference between information and wisdom. Information changes what you know, wisdom changes how you live. And here is what matters most about everything shared in this video. None of it requires perfect conditions to begin practicing. None of it requires you to have your life completely together first. None of it requires you to wait until the anxiety is gone, or the uncertainty has resolved, or the thing you are waiting for has finally arrived. You can begin right now, in this exact moment, in whatever circumstances you are currently sitting in. You can begin the practice of relaxing into trust, of loosening the grip, of choosing presence over panic, of deciding that your peace does not have to wait for your problems to disappear. This is the beginning, not the middle, not the end, the beginning of a different relationship with your own life, of a different quality of attention you bring to your days, of a slowly, quietly, genuinely different inner landscape that everything you experience passes through. And everything changes when the inner landscape changes. Not all at once, not dramatically, but steadily, surely, in the unhurried, trustworthy way that nature has always demonstrated is the only way anything real ever grows. Before we close, if this video added something to your life today, if it shifted something even slightly, if it gave you one thought worth carrying with you into tomorrow, please take 2 seconds right now and hit that like button. It costs you nothing, and it means everything for this message to reach more people who need to hear it. Drop a comment below and tell us, what is the one thing from this video that hit you the hardest? What are you going to stop forcing starting today? Your words in that comment section do not just help this channel, they create a community of people who are all learning the same quiet courage at the same time, and that matters more than you know. Share this video with one person, just one, who you think is carrying something too heavy right now, who is chasing too hard and resting too little, who needs someone to gently remind them that they are allowed to exhale. And if you have not subscribed yet, please do, because what we build here at Wisdom Woven is not just content, it is a conversation, an ongoing, honest, deeply human conversation about how to live with more clarity, more peace, and more trust in the extraordinary, ordinary life you are already living. The bamboo tree you have been watering, keep watering it. The seed you planted in the dark, trust that the roots are growing even when the surface looks still. The river you have been fighting, consider, just for today, what it might feel like to stop swimming against it and simply float. You have done the hard work of staying through this entire video. That tells you something about yourself. That tells you that part of you already knows what needs to change. Part of you already understands that the exhaustion you have been feeling is not a sign that you are failing. It is a sign that you have been trying too hard in the wrong direction. And now you have something different to try. The door that opens when you stop kicking the locked ones is always the right one. The path that appears when you stop forcing your way through the wall is always the better one. And the life that begins when you finally exhale and trust the process is always more than the one you were frantically trying to construct on your own timeline. Buddhism waited 2,500 years to reach you today. It was not in a hurry. It never is, because the teaching that is true does not need urgency to prove itself. It simply waits, patient as a mountain, quiet as deep water, certain as the seasons, knowing that when the student is ready, not when the student demands to be ready, but when they genuinely are, the teaching will be there, unchanged, unhurried, exactly as it always was. And here you are, ready. Everything is already coming to you, not on your schedule, on the right one. And the most powerful thing you can do right now, the single most transformative act available to you in this moment, is to take one slow breath. Let your shoulders drop, unclench your jaw, release the grip just slightly, and trust with every quiet and courageous part of you that what is yours is already on its way home. It always was.